Picture this, a frozen Belgian forest, 1944. The roar of German tanks falls silent not from enemy fire, but from something far more devastating, empty fuel tanks. One man, a battle-hardened SS colonel, stumbles upon an American supply depot, a treasure trove of 50,000 gallons of fuel. It's a miracle, a lifeline for his desperate offensive. But what he discovers next doesn't just stop his tanks, it stops his heart. This is the moment a German colonel realized the war was lost not on the battlefield, but in the overwhelming, unstoppable might of American logistics. Stay tuned and watch till the end to uncover the shocking truth behind this moment. December 17, 1944. Dawn hasn't broken yet in Honsfeld, Belgium. The air is bitter, the ground frozen solid. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, 29 years old, decorated veteran of the Eastern Front, stands atop his Tiger tank, his breath visible in the pre-dawn chill. The engine sputters, coughs, and dies. Silence. His driver, Unterstufenführer Weber, tries the ignition again. Nothing. The fuel gauge needle sits at 0. Weber's voice cracks from below, "The reserve tank's dry, sir." Peiper slams his fist against the turret, the metallic clang echoing like a death knell. Around him, the pride of the Wehrmacht, 67 Tiger and Panther tanks, 149 half-tracks, nearly 5,000 elite Waffen-SS soldiers, sits motionless. This is Kampfgruppe Peiper, the spearhead of Hitler's last gamble, Operation Watch on the Rhine, the Ardennes offensive. Meant to split the Allied lines and seize the port of Antwerp, it's Germany's final chance to turn the tide. But now, barely a day into the offensive, they're stranded. No fuel, no movement. Peiper climbs down, boots crunching on icy soil. His men are tense, their faces pale in the dim light. Through the morning mist, he spots something: an abandoned American position at Honsfeld, a supply depot for the U.S. 99th Infantry Division. The Americans fled in such haste that fires still burn in oil drums, coffee steams in tin cups. And there, like a vision from a war god, stand rows of olive-drab jerry cans. Thousands of them. Peiper approaches, heart pounding. His adjutant, Hauptsturmführer Hans Gruller, pries open a can and sniffs. "High-octane gasoline," he says, almost in awe. American. Peiper's men swarm the depot, hauling cans to their tanks, the clatter of metal and shouts of urgency filling the air. Peiper counts, his mind racing. 50,000 gallons. Enough to fuel his entire force to the Meuse River, maybe even to change the offensive's fate. It's more fuel than most German divisions have seen in months. But as his men pour American gasoline into German tanks, a shadow falls over Peiper. The math doesn't lie. If the Americans can abandon 50,000 gallons, enough to fuel a German division for weeks, without a second thought, what kind of enemy are they fighting? Germany guards every liter with divisions, America leaves oceans of fuel behind. In that moment, standing among the jerry cans, Peiper glimpses a truth that chills him more than the Belgian winter: Germany is doomed. 6 months earlier, in June 1944, Hitler's Minister of Armaments, Albert Speer, delivered a report that should have stopped the war cold. Germany's synthetic fuel plants, its mechanized army's lifeblood, were crumbling under Allied bombs. The Luna works, once producing 175,000 tons of fuel a month, limped along at 5,000 tons by September. Plants at Palitz, Blechhammer, and Brucks operated at less than 10% capacity. Germany's total output, including captured Romanian fields, was 33 million barrels of oil in 1944. The United States? 1.8 billion barrels, over 50 times more. Germany was fighting a mechanized war with horse-drawn logistics. The Ardennes offensive needed 4.5 million gallons of fuel to reach Antwerp. Hitler promised 5 million, only half arrived, crippled by bombed railways and Allied air raids. The German plan hinged on one desperate hope: capturing American fuel. It wasn't strategy, it was surrender disguised as ambition. Meanwhile, the Americans operated on a scale Peiper couldn't fathom. Across France, the Red Ball Express roared, a convoy of 6,000 trucks delivering 12,500 tons of supplies daily, burning more fuel in a day than Germany allocated monthly. Operation Pluto pipeline under the ocean pumped 1 million gallons a day from Britain to the front. By December 1944, American forces in Europe consumed 1.2 million gallons daily and received 1.4 million, stockpiling reserves while fighting. Peiper wasn't naive. A Knight's Cross holder, he'd seen the Eastern Front's brutality and learned one truth: in modern war, fuel matters more than bullets. His Kampfgruppe was the offensive's tip of the spear, tasked with punching through to the Meuse River, 65 miles away. But at Tondorf, 2 days before the offensive, General Sepp Dietrich, commander of the 6th SS Panzer Army, laid it bare: you'll have enough fuel to reach the Meuse if you capture American supplies. Peiper's allocation? 31,000 gallons. Enough for 50 miles of combat. The Meuse was 15 miles too far. On December 16, as the offensive began, Peiper issued strict orders: tanks move single file to save fuel, engines off during halts longer than 5 minutes, capturing fuel dumps was priority 1, above all else. Across the lines, 20 miles away, Captain James Rose of the U.S. 743rd Tank Battalion wrote in his diary, fuel resupply, 8,000 gallons. Third delivery this week. Tanks at capacity. The contrast was staggering. At 0530 on December 16, German artillery unleashed a barrage that shook the Ardennes, firing more shells in 2 hours than entire operations earlier in the war. But it masked a fatal flaw: fuel shortages. Peiper's column rolled out at 0700, already behind schedule. German maps promised highways, reality delivered narrow, muddy lanes. Traffic jams choked the Ardennes forests as tanks built for Russian steppes bogged down. At Lanzerath, a single American platoon, 18 men, held Peiper's column for 10 hours, burning fuel as tanks idled. By dawn on December 17, Peiper reached Honsfeld, 20 miles in, with 40% of his fuel gone. The depot's bounty was beyond belief. Gruller later testified: pyramids of jerry cans, 5 gallons each, stacked 3 meters high, stretching 200 meters. The Americans didn't even try to destroy them. But there was a catch. The fuel was 80-octane aviation gasoline, too rich for German tanks designed for 74-octane. Engines misfired, some even failing under the strain of American abundance. Peiper's men uncovered more. Sergeant Wilhelm Hoffmann, who read English from his pre-war days in his father's import business, found shipping manifests. The fuel had traveled 6,000 miles, from Texas to New York, Liverpool to Normandy, then 400 miles by truck to Honsfeld, in under 6 weeks. Peiper read the papers, his face paling. Private Ernst Carr found a 2-day-old Stars and Stripes newspaper, its headline boasting a new pipeline from Cherbourg to Verdun, delivering 300,000 gallons daily, more than Peiper's entire offensive needed. The discovery hit like a sledgehammer. Germany's fuel crisis was dire. Allied bombs had slashed synthetic fuel production by 90%. The Luftwaffe grounded planes, pilots trained for 60 hours instead of 250. U-boats ran on batteries to save diesel. Civilians hadn't driven cars since 1942, farmers plowed with horses. The Gestapo hunted black market fuel thieves over single liters. Meanwhile, America produced 67% of the world's oil. The East Texas oil field alone outproduced all of occupied Europe. Standard Oil toyed with byproducts, swimming in excess crude. With Honsfeld's 50,000 gallons, Peiper's column surged to Bullingen, capturing more supplies, rations, ammo, maps. The maps revealed a nightmare: American fuel depots dotted every major crossroads. The U.S. First Army held 3.5 million gallons in reserve. At Ligneville, Peiper's desperation led to horror: the Malmedy massacre, where his men killed 84 American prisoners. Peiper later claimed he couldn't spare fuel to transport them. By evening on December 17, Peiper reached Stavelot, home to a massive depot with 2.2 million gallons. Enough to reach the Meuse and beyond. But as his tanks approached, American engineers struck. Captain John Brewster of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion had orders: deny fuel at all costs. His men poured gasoline trails between stacks of jerry cans. Technical Sergeant Paul Solis tossed a white phosphorus grenade. The explosion was cataclysmic, a 100-foot wall of fire. The depot became an inferno, burning for 3 days. Peiper watched from his tank, speechless, as black smoke rose 1,000 feet. Untersturmführer Weber recalled, he said nothing for 5 minutes, then climbed down and muttered, "They can burn 2 million gallons to deny us. What are we doing here?" Across the Ardennes, Americans torched their own supplies. At Thuin, 1.1 million gallons burned. At Spa, 2.5 million. In 1 week, they destroyed 8 million gallons, more than Germany's entire offensive allocation. The Red Ball Express delivered 412,000 tons of supplies with 6,000 trucks, each burning 40 gallons daily. Operation Pluto pumped 1 million gallons a day. The Cherbourg-Paris pipeline added 800,000, the Seine line, 650,000. Allied forces consumed 7.5 million gallons daily, receiving 8.2 million, stockpiling surplus in battle. By December 18, Peiper's fuel was critical. At Chenouse, his tanks burned 5,000 gallons in 3 hours. Tigers guzzled 2.5 gallons per mile, Panthers 1.5. The Ardennes terrain spiked consumption by 40%. Hauptsturmführer Otto Dingler, maintenance officer, noted, "We used 67,000 gallons since the offensive began, captured 55,000. We're running a deficit." American ultra-intercepts confirmed Peiper's crisis. General Courtney Hodges ordered, "Enemy fuel critical. Destroy all gasoline." That day, C-47s flew 316 sorties to Bastogne, delivering 160,000 gallons, more than Peiper's entire force had. On December 19, at Stoumont, Peiper's tanks began stalling, not from damage but empty tanks. He consolidated 8,000 gallons, enough for one fight or retreat, not both. Allied planners, meanwhile, approved 245 million gallons for January without blinking. American Shermans burned 0.8 gallons per mile, German Tigers, 2.5. American trucks got 8 miles per gallon, German vehicles, a chaotic mix of captured French and Soviet models, needed mismatched parts, compounding the nightmare. On December 20, a radio message sealed Peiper's fate, fuel convoy destroyed by Allied aircraft. No resupply. Proceed with available resources. He gathered his commanders. Sturmbannführer Werner Potschke was blunt, "We have fuel for 20 kilometers. The Meuse is 30. Gruller recalled Peiper's words, "Gentlemen, we're fighting an enemy who burns more fuel to deny us than we received for this offensive. Honsfeld's 50,000 gallons was miraculous to us, nothing to them. We cannot win." The realization spread. General Otto von Manschufel, commanding the 5th Panzer Army, wrote, "When I learned the Americans burned 8 million gallons rather than let us have it, I knew the offensive was doomed before it started." Colonel Friedrich von der Heydt, captured December 23, told interrogators, "Your soldiers toss half-eaten rations, mine haven't seen chocolate in years. You burn millions of gallons, we measure liters. How do we fight that?" By December 21, Peiper was surrounded at La Gliese, his tanks immobile. The U.S. 31st Infantry, 82nd Airborne, and 3rd Armored had 340,000 gallons allocated that day alone. Peiper had 1,000. Private First Class Richard McKinney wrote home, "We've got Germans surrounded who ran out of gas. Our captain says we use more fuel heating coffee than they have for tanks." Patton's Third Army pivoted north, burning 350,000 gallons in 3 days, a maneuver Germans deemed impossible. On December 23, clear skies unleashed 2,000 Allied sorties. P-47s burned 300 gallons per hour, B-20 CXS-200. 1 day's air operations consumed more than Germany's entire offensive allocation. That night, Peiper abandoned his vehicles and fled on foot. Of 119 tanks, 39 remained operational but immobilized. Oberleutnant Heinz Goltz described draining 200 gallons total. The Obersturmbannführer destroyed his own tank. Millions in equipment, lost to empty tanks. Of 5,000 men, 770 returned. News reached Field Marshal Walter Model on December 26. His chief of staff recorded, he read the numbers twice, 50,000 gallons at Honsfeld, 2 million burned at Stavelot, 8 million destroyed. He said, "We're not fighting the same war." Hitler, informed on December 28, dismissed it as propaganda, claiming Stavelot's flames were Hollywood effects. But the ranks knew better. Grenadier Wilhelm Hoffmann wrote his wife, Americans destroy more fuel daily than we get monthly. They drive tanks like we march. The war is lost. The numbers were merciless. America produced 50% of global manufacturing in 1944, an aircraft every 5 minutes, a tank every 7, a ship daily. Petroleum output dwarfed all, 1.8 billion barrels to Germany's 33 million, Japan's 2.6 million. The Axis combined produced less than 2% of America's oil. Every German offensive since 1942 choked on fuel shortages, American offensive swam in surplus. Lieutenant Colonel Chester Hansen noted on December 27, "Weather cut fuel deliveries to 500,000 gallons daily. We worried, then realized that's more than Germany's entire offensive." German prisoners were stunned not by firepower but waste, GIs tossing half-eaten rations, burning gasoline for warmth. Oberst Kurt Reichhelm told interrogators, "We knew your production abstractly, but seeing soldiers waste more than we had made it real. Every German who saw your abundance knew hope was gone." Letters spread the truth despite censorship. Feldwebel Ernst Muller wrote, "Americans wash clothes in gasoline, feed dogs chocolate, fire artillery for Christmas. We can't fight infinity." At Nuremberg, leaders echoed this. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt said, "By 1944, we couldn't move for lack of fuel. Americans moved armies like chess pieces." Peiper, tried for Malmedy, testified, "Every decision after Honsfeld was fuel-driven. Americans moved freely, we counted liters." General Heinz Guderian wrote, "When Peiper captured 50,000 gallons, everything to him, nothing to them, the war was over." The Ardennes killed 19,000 Americans, perhaps 100,000 Germans. It shattered the Wehrmacht's reserves. But its true impact was psychological. Every German who saw American abundance knew defeat was inevitable. By February 1945, German fuel production stopped. The Luftwaffe grounded, the Wehrmacht stalled. Divisions surrendered, immobile. General Major Fritz Bayerlein recalled, "We had 42 tanks, crews, ammo, but 300 liters of fuel. We destroyed our tanks and walked to captivity." American advances faced only traffic jams from too many vehicles. Third Army alone had 15,000. At Log-Lys, Americans found 39 pristine German tanks, abandoned for lack of fuel. Major Robert Harrison's report noted, fuel needed, 8,000 gallons. Source, Local Reserve. Time, 4 hours. To Germans, 8,000 gallons was salvation, to Americans, a footnote. Peiper survived, imprisoned until 1956 for war crimes. In 1967, he told historian Henry Lehman, "Finding Honsfeld's depot was the worst moment. If we'd run out sooner, we might have retreated with dignity. Instead, we saw oceans of fuel while we had drops. We saw impossibility." He was murdered in 1976, his killers unknown. In 1984, veterans met at Log-Lys. A Tiger tank, fuel gauge empty, stands in the museum. Former Unterstützungsführer Karl Wertmann and Staff Sergeant Roy Anderson stood beside it. "We wondered why you stopped," Anderson said. "We thought it was tactics." Wertmann laughed bitterly, "Tanks were empty. You burned millions to keep it from us. How could we fight that?" Anderson replied softly, "We never knew you were that short. We had so much, we never thought about it." That was December 1944's truth. One side measured in gallons, the other in millions. One fought for every can, the other burned oceans. German records tell the story. December 16, offensive begins, fuel at 70% minimum. December 17, Peiper captures 50,000 gallons. December 18, 5 million gallons burned. December 24, Peiper abandons vehicles, fuel gone. American logs read differently. December 16, reserves 3.7 million gallons. December 17, 2.2 million destroyed. December 24, reserves 4.1 million. American fuel wasn't just abundant, it was better. Refineries used catalytic cracking for 100-octane aviation fuel, outpacing German 87-octane synthetic. Additives like tetraethyllead gave Allied planes an edge. German engines choked on captured fuel, too rich for their design. Fuel shaped every moment. Grenadier Hans Muller wrote, "Marched 30 kilometers, no fuel for trucks. Past American vehicles, engines running for warmth. Medics couldn't evacuate wounded, hospitals lost power." Oberarzt Wilhelm Kirsting testified, "We had surgeons, supplies, but no fuel for ambulances. Men died waiting for a 10-kilometer ride." The Ardennes broke Germany's myth of superiority. Propaganda called Americans weak, reality showed them burning more fuel than Germany possessed. Goebbels' diary, December 28, morale problems grow. Soldiers write of American wealth, undermining our narrative. The offensive failed not from tactics but mathematics. Germany allocated 5 million gallons, Americans consumed 267 million in the same period, 100 times more. Honsfeld's 50,000 gallons, 0.6% of one day's American supply, was Peiper's miracle in Germany's epitaph. The war ended not in gunfire but empty tanks. Industrial warfare crowned the victor, not courage, but production, not generals, but refineries. America's factories churned out 324,750 aircraft, 88,410 tanks, 1.8 billion barrels of oil. Germany managed 119,907 aircraft, 46,857 tanks, 33 million barrels. The gap was unbridgeable. This is the story of how logistics won a war, how fuel, not just firepower, shaped history. Want to dive deeper into the untold stories of World War II, where numbers and supply lines decided fates? Subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales of history's turning points. Don't just hear the story, uncover the truth behind it. Click now and join the journey.